Episode 75 of the Pilot to Pilot podcast takes off now.
Yeah, my name is Mark Palm. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Samaritan Aviation. I fly seaplanes in Papua New Guinea, rescuing people on a very remote river.
What is going on, Aviation? Welcome back to the Pilot to Pilot podcast. My name is Justin Seams, and I am your host. Today is a great episode. I know that I've said that multiple times, but I truly believe this is a great episode. Today, I'm talking with Mark Palm. Mark Palm is a seaplane pilot out in Papua New Guinea. He flies for a company that he co-founded called Samaritan Aviation. And what Samaritan Aviation does is truly impact lives in Papua New Guinea. It's the only way for some of these tribes to get to a hospital or to get medication. So they are dealing with a lot. They are flying people constantly. There's a lot of emergencies. In the episode, he talks about people dying in the airplanes, limbs being chopped off, tribal wars. So it's just a different kind of aviation, a different way that we can use aviation to impact the community. So it's great to hear. It's a great story, and I'm very happy that Mark wanted to come on the podcast and talk a little bit about it, because I think it's something that needs to be talked about. So it's a great opportunity, and I'm very thankful. If you enjoy this episode, please let us know. You can review on iTunes. You can let me know via Instagram at Pilot to Pilot. All our other social media platforms are also Pilot to Pilot. If you want to email me, send me an email at pilottopilot@gmail.com. Also, check out our Patreon page. Special shout out today to our Patreon of the week, Thomas London. Thomas London is a $20 supporter. I hope you enjoy that shirt, Thomas. Thanks for the support. Also, guys, I just am really excited about this episode. So go ahead and enjoy this episode. Share it with everyone you know. Spread the word of Pilot to Pilot. Get it out there. Everyone should be listening to this podcast, but I hope you enjoy it. So without any further ado, here's Mark Palm. Mark, what is going on? Welcome to the Pilot to Pilot podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Great to be with you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on. And we were talking a little bit earlier about what you do, and it is just so cool. And I've never talked to anyone on the podcast that has the experience that you have and has done the type of flying that you have. So I'm really looking forward to you telling your story and talking a little about what you do and what your mission is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing it. It's an amazing journey, and just getting started, I feel like. So.
Yeah, definitely. And the first thing I always do in the podcast is I go ahead and start from the beginning. I start with you, and I start why you got into aviation. So go ahead and talk a little bit about why and what the original inspiration was for you starting in aviation.
Yeah, for me, aviation was kind of a family thing. My grandfather flew in World War II, flew P-31s and also DC-4s and some different things. And military side. Then I had two uncles that flew airplanes growing up. My cousin was a military prowler pilot. Now he flies for Delta. So I kind of had this aviation background, kind of hearing stories as a kid growing up. And so I was always inspired to initially be this military or commercial pilot, kind of following my family's footsteps. And so that kind of is where the whole aviation side for me began as a young boy, hearing stories.
Obviously, you're around aviation and you kind of just think, hey, I'm going to be a pilot too. But how old were you when you got into it? How did you start getting into it? Kind of explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. My first flight in a plane, I think I was 8 years old.
Oh, cool.
And I remember I was actually terrified. I was flying with my uncle, and the stall warning horn goes off and things like that on landing. And I just remember being, wow, this is crazy. But at the same point, just this excitement about it, just this idea of flying yourself up in the sky and seeing the world from a different perspective. And I think those moments were inspirational, and didn't see my cousin progress in the military, and he went to Embry-Riddle in Arizona, and just continuing to hear stories. I wasn't one of those guys that was at the airport every weekend as a kid. I just heard a lot of stories, and my family would fly in, my uncle would fly in, and then I would see them different places growing up. But it was, it's kind of in a different deal. Like it was always a dream, it was always a plan, but it wasn't something in high school. Living out in Santa Cruz, California, I didn't go flying. I didn't have any friends at that time who flew. But it was still this plan that I had to, I always figured I'd be military or commercial. And so that was kind of on aviation side, that was kind of my my background, just reading stories about aviators and hearing stories of my family.
Yeah. How old were you when you started actually flying?
I started flying at 19 years old up in Watsonville, California, and that was my story kind of takes a bit of a turn as a 16-year-old, because really all of a sudden my reason for flying changed, and I think that's a big part of my story and the reason that I've really took on, especially the roles that I've had over the last 15, 18 years in aviation, was based on a big life change for me, and changing my focus on aviation from military commercial and what that looks like to actually using aviation as a tool to save lives and to share God's love with people in remote areas. And I think that through physical, tangible things that we do. And so I think that really changed my life and helped really shape what I've become as an aviator over the years.
So before you're 16, the goal was military or airline pilot or any kind of commercial pilot, kind of to go transport people to make money, fly the airlines and that kind of stuff. And then when you turned 16, you had a new goal, and that was to kind of figure out how you can use it as a tool to help people.
Yeah. So initially it was like, how can I go see the world? I've had an adventurous spirit. And so it was like aviation. I can fly around the world. I can make money, have free schedules. And, if I go that route, and if I do military, I can do the same thing, just differently, go see the world and serve our country. And then, as a kid going back farther, my father was a minister. And so as a 13-year-old, we moved to Santa Cruz, and he runs this we call it a homeless mission, or a church basically that also feeds the homeless people and gives them clothes. And so I'm there. I am as a teenager working with my family in this helping feed the homeless and having this opportunity to give back to people that don't have anything, and to give them food and clothes and things like that. And then I went to Mexico with my church youth group as a 16-year-old, and had a chance to see another culture and really see how most of the world lives, really, and just how blessed we are in the USA, and seeing a whole nother side of people living in cardboard boxes and going, wow, I can help someone as well. And then having a moment down there, I was reading some scripture in the morning one morning, and I just felt God speak to me, and it was hasn't happened since like that, but he just said, hey, what I heard was, Mark, I want you to use your passion for people and aviation to share my love in a remote part of the world. And that moment was a life changer for me. And I came back as a 16-year-old, and it was like, okay, it's not military, it's not commercial, it's going to some remote area. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, what do I have to do to prepare for that? And that adds a whole nother element, when you talk about being able to fix your airplane now, if you're the only one there, and what kind of training you get. So that's when I say my whole life shifted, and all of a sudden aviation was now a tool to do something good for others that didn't have access or hope to things that we all have. And that was a huge life changer for me. And then I had a chance to go to Papua New Guinea in 1994 as a 19-year-old, and for the first time, and see this country. Most people don't even know where Papua New Guinea is.
Right.
It's above Australia. It's in the South Pacific, and going to this place, it has a fifth of the world's languages, 820 languages, and so you're going to these remote areas, and for me, seeing a need there that was just so amazing. And heartbreaking at the same time, just this idea that people don't have access to medicine, they don't have access to healthcare that we take for granted here in the States, and how an airplane could be used to offer so much and to make a huge difference. So I think that trip also was just an incredible trip for me personally, and that really helped the focus. I went over there with a friend, and that's really where the dream, we came back, and that's where the dream for Samaritan Aviation came from. And so as a 19-year-old, we had this dream, and now it was like, okay, what do we have to do to get there? And so that again, once we had this dream, that shaped, all of everything from there on, what the training I needed, which airplanes I was going to fly, I ended up going to aviation mechanic school, which is not something I wasn't mechanical growing up. I wasn't. I think I changed my oil one time in my car, before showing up at A&P school, and so that's a whole other side of aviation, but a critical side when you're talking about flying in a place like Papua New Guinea, and so that was another part that completely was a shift for me aviation wise. All of a sudden, it was more than just flying an airplane. It was getting to know an airplane in a whole different way. And so that was a big change for me as well.
Yeah. Well, talk about the training. Talk about how you kind of had that change in mindset of how you wanted to use aviation and how you wanted to become a pilot and further your career. But you had very specific training that you need to go to do that. And I know there's some places. I grew up in Charlotte, and there's I don't know if you might be familiar with JARS. JARS is located in Waxhaw, which was about 20 minutes south. And I know a lot of people, I think it's AIMers, they go there as well, and they go there to learn, and they kind of do a crash course on how to teach people how to fly in remote areas. Did you go to a course like that, or did you are there other courses that you can go to get that type of training that you needed?
Yeah, it was for me. It was a little different. Back then. It's interesting now, all the organizations work a lot closer together now than they used to 25 years ago. And so in that time, it was like, for me, the dream was, okay, it was Papua New Guinea. The dream for Samaritan was always seaplane. So there was very limited seaplane opportunities for training. And nobody's training seaplanes, at least on the West Coast. There might be some small group that's doing it, but not real training, more like get your rating. You have 6 hours and now you have your float rating, which
good luck.
Really doesn't mean
Enjoy.
anything.
Yeah,
exactly. Just means you can go get in trouble. But I think so that was a bit of a specific goal. This is the seaplane side. And then all of a sudden knowing that I had to fix my own airplane in a place like Papua New Guinea was all of a sudden I not only needed A&P school, and that was a two-year process, but I also needed time in the field. Just having all that theory doesn't necessarily translate, especially for someone like me who didn't have a mechanical background. Right. I didn't work on my car on the weekends, so I ended up working 6 years as an aircraft mechanic at Santa Monica Airport here in California, and over at Palomar, and just getting that experience of being forced to do 100 hours and oil changes and annual inspections and all of those things. And that was really the foundation on the maintenance side. And then on the flying side, we had some different people that came alongside of us. We had an aviation advisor. And in 2000, so going back a little bit, a 94 trip to New Guinea, 2000, we incorporate Samaritan Aviation. And so as a nonprofit. So through all of those, starting the training in that time and then continuing the training, I got my private, up down in San Diego, my instrument in Carlsbad, and my commercial Santa Monica, and my seaplane in Alaska. So I kind of
you worked your way up.
Took the long route. And, as an aircraft mechanic, I was able to work on people's airplanes, and then they would let me fly for the cost of fuel, which helped knock the cost of training down. It also took a lot longer, but that was kind of my road. And then, so then it's like, how do I get seaplane training? And then I had an opportunity to fly a float plane down from Alaska to California.
Oh, dang.
This company was like, every half a year, they'd bring their planes down. And once it got too cold in Alaska, they'd bring the float planes down to California, and then they'd train all winter, flying back up. And so they had this amazing deal where if I paid for fuel, they'd have an instructor in the plane, and I could fly the plane down, get hours, and 25 hours for $1,500 or something. Yeah. In a float plane is pretty incredible. So absolutely. So that's kind of how I started with the float training. And then I also did several. I found some bush pilots from Bolivia that had flown in seaplanes, and I went and did some specific training in a Super Cub up in Idaho, backcountry in the water and the rivers up there. And also our aviation advisor, Bruce Johnson, he was 40-year float pilot in Alaska, so he did a lot of the training with me in the States in different areas as well. So that was kind of my more specific training. Some of the other things that we did too, in the early days, we weren't in Papua New Guinea, and that's a whole nother story is how we got over there. on how we got over there. But we were flying to Mexico, and we'd fly doctors, volunteer doctors.
And float planes or normal planes?
No, this was all wheel planes.
Yeah.
We got our first airplane in 2002. It was a 182, and so we were flying down to Mexico to do something and to gain experience. So that was another way that I was able to gain experience in international, going border crossings and working internationally and flying volunteers and what it takes to do that and organizing all of those trips. And so that was how I kept kind of building my time. I've never actually worked. I've worked for Samaritan Aviation since 2000, and I've never held a job outside of Samaritan Aviation as far as an aviation job. So that's a very unusual. A couple of mechanic jobs before that, but no flying jobs. So,
yeah, that's rare.
Yeah, it's a very rare journey. And then as far as you look at, I was over all the aviation side of Samaritan and trying to say, okay. Papua New Guinea, you have this area, there's a 700-mile river. There's 220,000 people living on this river, and the closest hospital for most of those people is 1 to 3 days away.
Oh, my gosh.
And there's no wheel runway. There's maybe 2 wheel runways along this 700-mile river. And so now you're going, okay, what airplane do we need to take? And so that's a whole nother conversation as you're trying to figure out we don't think about fuel availability in America, for example. Those are avgas. Avgas in Indonesia, for example, is non-existent today. Can't find it, so everybody's had to go fly a jet down to the turbine aircraft. And so, what aircraft is viable? And then, if we're doing medical, what is going to work on the medical side? And what's your flight profile? And you start thinking about all of those things: maintenance, flight training, and that's a whole other side of what we do in Papua New Guinea that's very, very interesting that most of us don't have to think about as well. But for me, going back, a big part of it was trying to get the word out. Tell a story about why someone should help us get a float plane to Papua New Guinea.
What would you say? How did you get that? What story did you tell?
I told stories that I'd heard over in Papua New Guinea myself when I went and visited. I went back in 2001 and 2003, 2005, and hearing story after story of people dying, trying to get to that one hospital, and people not getting medical supplies. For 6 months they'd be out of medical supplies because there's no way to get the medicine from where the medicine storehouse was, which is the same place the hospital is, which is on the north coast of Papua New Guinea in a little town called Wewak. How do you get that medicine out to the river, and how do you get those people from the river back to the hospital? And those two things weren't happening. And so I just kept telling this story and being an advocate for these people, that were dying, trying to get. If you can imagine, you have a snake bite where you have about 8 hours to live, or you have a obstructed birth, or you have a tribal fight because there's still a lot of tribal fighting over there, and people spearing each other, and how are you going to make it 3 days to get to the nearest hospital down in a canoe, trying to get to the 1 or 2 roads that are along the river, and then trying to find a vehicle to get you into 3 or 4 hours to the hospital. When you have no money, you're living in shacks. Not shacks in the sense of bush houses, really. That you've made out of the trees around you, and you're fishing every morning. There's no electricity. There's no roads. There's no modern conveniences of any kind, and you're paddling a canoe around that you cut out with an axe from a tree, and that's your life every day. And how do you get to that hospital when you need help, which is quite frequently because 98% of the people have malaria, and the amount of disease and sickness in these areas is just seems to go on and on. And so I told that story to anyone that would listen. My buddy and I, we went around America and we told our wives. Kind of a funny story is in 2000, we the 4 of us, my friend, his wife, and my wife and I, we stood in front of someone else's airplane in San Diego, California, at the airport there, and we made this little card that we mailed out to 330 people. And we said, we have this dream we'd love you to help us. And we fully expected all of this money to come in. And I think we raised about $330 out of that big mail out.
Not enough for an airplane.
Not enough for a tank of gas, but we had put a stake in the ground, and we'd shared our dream, and we believed that was what, for us, we're a Christian organization. We felt like it was what God had called us to do, and that there was a reason for that. So we kept sharing that story, and then we kept sharing the story of people dying and why people in America should care about someone who's 10,000 miles away.
Yeah. And
because they deserve a chance too, that we all have value. And I think that it took 10 years, and it was a lot of work and a lot of tenacity. And we bought an old project airplane out of Hawaii, float plane, in 2006. It took 2 years to refurb it, and I did a lot of that work as well, and getting this plane flying. And then we took it on a tour around America in 2008 and 2009, and then shipped it over December 2009. And I ended up putting it back together with a bag of tools in the Capitol in February 2010, and flew it into Wewak, which is about 500 miles away, which is where we work today. And I think, just going back, I think back to all that preparation time, it took 10 years to get over there, and it took way longer than we ever dreamed. It was a bit harder. I don't recommend people to start organizations, especially aviation organizations. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And most people aren't looking to give money to start up aviation organizations.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's a hard sell, that's for sure. But I'm glad it all worked out, and I know it took longer than you thought, but you were able to put this dream and mission together, and you have some. I mean, it just sounds like some crazy stories to tell from there. I guess one thing I wanted to ask about the training that I didn't ask yet was, you talked about kind of getting your seaplane rating and how most people just get 6 hours and they're sent on their way. And it's more of just, hey, I have a seaplane rating. It's not like, hey, I go fly seaplanes. What was, how many hours and what was the training like to make yourself comfortable to go fly seaplanes all the time? Or how much did it take for the general public to kind of have more awareness around that, about how just because you have a seaplane rating, it still doesn't mean that you're proficient and you should be flying seaplanes all the time, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the reality is that, when even though I flew down from Alaska and, had some pretty harrowing experiences on that flight, I didn't mean I knew how to fly a seaplane. I think the reality is now you can go land on a lake somewhere and not kill yourself, Yeah. But that's not real seaplane flying from the sense of what we do in New Guinea. I mean, so I think the reality is I could have used more training. I think I had about 130 hours of seaplane, which, you can't even, most people in Alaska want you to have 1,000 hours of seaplane just to get a job up there for most of the lodges. But for us, it was like, I got what I could. I did the best I could. And then I also had our aviation advisor, Bruce Johnson is his name. And he's got, 40 years in Alaska and helped start the Kodiak project. And, he was over there for the first month with me. So I had a lot of really good mentors and him especially, to walk me through. Obviously, that based on what we do in New Guinea, I could have used Bruce for about a year over there. But after a month, we managed to make it work. But the thing about what we do too, it's you have different seaplane places around in America. They're pretty. Most of them are pretty wide open. And you're talking Papua New Guinea. You're going out. In this area that we're at, there's nothing else out there. So if you have an accident or you mess up, you're not getting home for a while.
Yeah,
it could be a couple days. And so when I went out there by myself for the first time, I was the only float plane in the country. I was the only guy that could work on it, fly it, and I'm going into a lot of places no one has ever been. I think that part was probably the most stressful of it all. And knowing if I had made one bad decision, that it could be catastrophe, not just for me personally on a life and death situation, but also for the whole organization and for the people that had given, to support us and to help us get over there all these years. So that pressure probably for me was even more than anything else. But and then you're flying and you're making these decisions in these areas that you don't really know anything about, and you're looking down, and the river is the color of chocolate, and you can't see below it. On the Sepik River, for example, this river, closest thing you'd say is the size of the Mississippi, the main Sepik, which is the 700-mile river I mentioned. But it can rise and fall up to 20 feet in a week.
Oh, dang.
So if you can imagine a river that's 3,000 feet wide in some places, you come the next week and all of a sudden it's 1,000 foot wide in the same place where it was 3,000 foot wide a week before, and there's big sandbars sticking up, and sandbars move all the time. And then it's fed by 400 inches of rain. So when that river's coming up, now you have 100-foot logs floating down the river and roots sticking up 50 feet in the air and just debris, and so now you're trying to make a decision on how do I safely get down. Usually you can get down in currents. Once you figure out how the currents all work, you can find a clean area. But then it's like a lot of times where you're having to dock is on the sides. You have to kind of make your way through all the debris on the river to get to the side, and then there's no docks. So this idea where you're parking with a fast flowing river between two palm trees, and sometimes the wing of your airplane's over the bank and you can step right off, and other times that same bank is 20 feet above you.
Oh my gosh.
And dealing with villagers who've never seen an airplane before, and they're the ones helping you.
They're like, what?
When you come up the dock, they're grabbing the plane, you're trying to talk to them. So there was a whole side of that I had to learn the language over there. The trade language is Tokpisin, and that's what we speak, and I had to learn that language. I had to learn the culture. And so there was a whole side of what we do that had nothing to do with flying an airplane that I had to figure out. And then docking the airplane, which is in seaplanes, especially in that environment, and undocking. You're relying on them to get the plane off the bank of the river, and you have to explain everything really well. I remember one time I didn't explain things very well. And I remember, I'll never forget, I was on the side of this river, and I've got the patient in the plane. This guy, I think he had been stabbed or something. And I'm around, I got the doctor in there. We always fly with a nurse and medical professional. And I'm on the other side of the plane, so the pilot side's on the left side. The older 206s that we used, the first one we had didn't have a right-hand door, so I was kind of on the other side. I had to walk around a rope on the front of the plane. If people can visualize that as a cable that goes across the front of the prop. And so I'm standing on the right side, far back, holding like 40 feet of rope, and then the villagers just push me out into the river. And I remember standing there like, what do I do now? The plane's like, we're going, actually you're in an eddy, so we're going upstream. There's like fishing nets, the pole sticking up really high. And I remember just like going, wow, this nothing I trained for prepared me for this moment.
No, not at all.
I don't know if I need to jump off or there's a lot of things I should have done differently, but I ended up just spinning around in circles, yelling.
Yeah, it's like, what do I do?
What do I do? So anyway, those are things that you thankfully we managed to get out of there without damaging anything. But there's a lot of things that we do on that end that I had to do that nothing I'd trained for prepared me for that kind of environment. But the goal, obviously, as you mentioned, there's different organizations. Every organization pretty much has a place where you go to do a training. We call it an assessment, really. There's a lot of schools now that do training specific for bush flying. And then for all of our pilots that join us, we have them do an assessment. There's some different schools that we work with, and we've worked with JARS as well to do the assessments. And so you're trying to figure out, can this guy fly an airplane proficiently? And it's not about flying too; it's about making good decisions. The one thing about our flying is, you're not just you're up above. You're trying to make a good decision. You're looking for fishing nets, crocodiles, people in canoes, the water levels, the currents, the winds, sandbars that are moving in the water you can't see through. So you have to make a lot of decisions. Then where do you dock the plane? How do you get in? How do you get out? And now you're adding a life and death situation to that, where now you have a mother who's bleeding out, or you have someone who's unconscious that's having seizures or whatever it is, and you're trying to safely get them into the plane, deal with that medical emergency, and think through all the flying side as well. And that's a whole nother side of what we do that is a different level. Now you're dealing with, I've had people die in the airplane. Now you're dealing with people that have had limbs chopped off, for example, and you're dealing with the whole blood side, and some people don't do well with that. And then you're dealing with moms, in labor, yelling and screaming. With in a 206, we fly Cessna 206s. You're sitting a foot away from the patient.
Yeah.
You're flying the airplane, so you're right in there, in the middle of all of this, and you're trying. You have the bad weather, and you have all of the obstacles and everything else. And so there's a whole side of what we do that is much more than just getting an airplane off the ground from point A to point B, and that's the hardest part, I think.
How did you even prepare yourself for this? Like, I understand, like you talked about how you went flying and the situation, like you did the float planes back out the 25 hours, did some extra flying there. And obviously the situation is so much different down in Papua New Guinea than it is in flying a float plane in Alaska or California or anywhere. How did you prepare yourself for even the flying part of it? And then also, how did the local government kind of react to this? Because I know from other people that I've talked to, I have a friend, like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if I said it on a recording, but a friend that flew for MAF, and there's a lot of dirty government, and there's a lot of, I don't necessarily bribery, but there's a lot of control over what happens in their country, and kind of talk a little bit about both those aspects of how you dealt with those and how you prepared for the locals and everything that was involved with that.
Yeah, no, it's some of this stuff is the flight stuff. You can train for flying. I couldn't really train for Papua New Guinea as far as the actual environment I flew in, because it's hot. Its density altitude's probably 3,800 feet every day.
Not climbing very well some days.
Yeah, even though you're on sea level.
Yeah,
and it's always hot, sweaty, no wind, most of it, and this river that's rising and falling and changing. Every flight is different. Every landing's different. There's no docks. It's very hard to train for some of that. Some of that you just have to adapt. Most of that. Then you add this culture that is totally different. It's not a Western culture. They don't think the way we do. They don't look at life the same way. Even decisions that are made are much more made community-wise versus individual-wise. And so as you're working through things, you're dealing with communities more than individuals a lot of times. Mm-hmm. But at the same point, an individual can control a whole community. So you're kind of with the chief system, you're dealing with one voice sometimes, and the rest of the village doesn't have a voice, even though it impacts the whole village. And then you're dealing with the government side of things, and for us, that's been a huge part. I mean, we don't charge for any of the flights that we do, and so in this area, to be able to offer a free service to these people takes a lot of money, obviously, and we never expected the U.S. supporters. We have amazing U.S. supporters and foundations and churches over here that support us, but we always knew that was never going to be enough. And really, we didn't want it to be all funded by America. We felt like the Papua New Guinean government needed to have a stake in it. And so from day one, we told them, look, we'll get the airplane here. We believe we can have a solution to a major issue with health service or lack of health service delivery. We believe we can fly medical emergencies, save a lot of lives. We believe we can get medical supplies out. We believe we can help with disasters and sickness outbreaks and all of the things that you're struggling with. But we have to have funding to do that, and so that was a big part of our talks with the government beforehand. Our goal was always to be part of what they were doing as well. It was like, okay, what are you guys doing? And let's make it better versus let's go do our own little thing on the side here and compete with you or duplicate what you're trying to do. So that, I think from the get-go, that attitude had a huge impact on our relationships with the government. And to be honest, I've never dealt with the you mentioned kind of the dirty side of that government, and Papua New Guinea is, corruption wise, it's ranked internationally pretty high on the corruption side.
I figured, yeah.
But for me personally, I've never had to deal with that. I've been very upfront. Never had to deal with any bribery.
That's good.
The reality is we're saving lives. We're not charging for it, and we're not making any money.
Okay.
No one's getting rich here. And I think they saw the heart of that. They saw us come in. And so today the Papua New Guinean government supports us 40% of all of our flight operations. And so
that's amazing.
Probably one of the only groups in the country that's happening with, which is amazing. It's unbelievable. They've seen the difference that we've made in the last 10 years now. They've seen the lives saved, and so now and from the day one, literally 6 months after I got there, the Prime Minister came in person and gave us a check.
Oh wow!
Gave me a check and said we want to support Samaritan. So those things from the get go have been huge and have really shaped the partnership that we have with the government. So we really consider it a partnership, and that's been an amazing and really probably one of the main reasons we've been successful, because it is a lot of money to do what we do with aviation, and when you're not charging, there's no money coming back the other way. So it takes everybody pitching in, and I think that's been huge.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the daily lifestyle of you or one of your pilots out there. Like, what's a typical day, or even what's the craziest day you've ever had in a way, and kind of just so someone listening now can kind of get a little bit of an understanding of the daily struggle of what you go through, or just what it takes to be a pilot out in Papua New Guinea.
Yeah. The amazing thing about what we do, and part of exciting for me, is no 2 days are ever the same. It's you can't schedule emergencies. So we're on call 7 days a week for emergency flights, and we cover the river. Sometimes, I've had up to 5 flights in a day before. Other times you'll go a couple days and not have an emergency flight. And then we'll have medical supply flights. And just to give you a little bit of history, we've done about 1,500 flights now with the seaplane. And that's leaving New Guinea. That's leaving WEWAC. That's not 1,500 landings. So a lot of times we'll land 4 or 5 times, but 1,500 flights leaving New Guinea. We've delivered 166,000 pounds of medical supplies to remote aid posts along the river, and we've saved thousands of lives through emergency flights and through disaster reliefs. When you're talking about stopping, I'll give you a quick story. 3 months before we arrived, there was a cholera outbreak in Sepik, and we had 3,000 people died.
Oh, wow.
And that was right on the lower river, and that was 3 months before we arrived. And since we've been there, we've never had more than 3 people die from an outbreak like that. And so we've been able to respond quickly to disasters and save lives that way. The medicines were sitting 6 months before. Now we can get them out the same week, the same day, right to the clinic. So instead of taking 3 days to go up by river, by boat, and have all of the temptations to sell medicine or things like that, or they get wet from the rainstorms, we're able to get medicine right to the clinic and have full accountability. And then obviously, all of the emergency flights, being on call 7 days a week. And so all of our days are different. And so a lot of our pilots, all of our pilots right now are mechanics. We have 3 pilots in New Guinea right now, another pilot that's hoping to get over there in the next 6 months. All of our pilots are mechanics as well as pilots. And so they do both. And we also have a team that goes into the hospital. So we bring these patients out. So if you can imagine, you're living on the side of the 700-mile river. You have a major emergency, and you get picked up by a plane. You've never been in an airplane. You've never even seen an airplane. Yeah. And then now you're flying to this hospital that is on the ocean. So you've never seen an ocean. You've never seen a car, electricity, stuff like that. So a lot of the patients that we fly in are dealing with that. So they're dealing with this whole mind shift of what life is and what is out there, and they're dealing with emergency. And so we have a team that goes in every day and prays with them and gives them clothes and feeds them and all of that every day. And so a lot of times we have about an average of 8 to 12 patients that are in the hospital, kind of rotating in and as they go. Some are there a long time, some are there a couple of days, depending on how sick they are. If they have babies, some of them, the babies are in the nursery for a while, trying to recover. And so there's a whole team. So the pilots are involved with that. So it's more, for us, it's more than just flying. So your day could be going to the hospital and just loving on people.
Yeah.
And then you go on a flight and save a life, or you've got a team that needs to go out, or you're flying vaccines out to a team. because the refrigeration system out in the remote areas doesn't exist. And so you're flying vaccines and ice and teams out to do outreaches that way or to do training. And so for us, our pilots, every day's different. I mean, and some days are really amazing. I'll tell you a couple different stories.
Yeah, please.
I remember the day that I flew out and I landed at along the side of the Sepik River, and they brought this lady with breech birth. She had breech birth, and so we get her in the plane, and I'm getting ready to push off the river, and this other lady shows up in a canoe, and she's got a breech birth. It just happens to show up when the plane's there, so they load her in the plane, and now I've got 2 pregnant women and a couple caregivers, and we take off for Wewak. It's about a 40-minute flight. We land there, rush them into emergency surgery and everything, and both of these women had twins.
Oh my gosh!
And it was crazy coming in the next day, and both the women survived, both the twins survived, and so for like one flight, we saved six lives.
That's crazy.
And so you have those amazing high moments, and then you'll have the time, like a few months ago when I'm flying back, and I'm 12 minutes from Wewak, and this 4-year-old girl dies in the plane.
Oh no!
And you're dealing with that side of it, and the family's freaking out. In this culture, when someone dies, it's obviously it's traumatic in any culture, but wailing and screaming is it's very demonstrative of grief. And so I'm in the plane, and this is all happening while I'm trying to fly the plane, and the parents really going freaking out in the back, and trying to talk to them, at the same time, trying to get the plane flown safely and get to where we're going, knowing that this little girl had passed, and also knowing that I had another flight right after that, where there'd been a domestic violence case, and some lady had her Achilles tendon cut with a machete, and so now I got that to go deal with.
Jeez.
Anyway, sometimes it's hard, what we do. It's very traumatic, and so you kind of have a lot of highs and some very deep lows. 93% of all the patients we fly in live. Yeah. So that's that's a good percentage, but that 7% that doesn't make it is very hard on our pilots. It's very hard on our families to work through that. That's another part that you don't. How do you train for that?
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Training to be a pilot and mechanic, and now you're dealing with people with death.
How do you deal with that in the plane? How do you deal with that situation that you're in? Obviously, like preparation, you can't, but like in the moment, you need to make sure that these people stay alive. You need to make sure you land this plane safely. And obviously you're distracted. They've never been on a plane before. They don't know what's going on. They're totally out of their comfort zone. You kind of have no idea how they're going to react or what they could do. So like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, in that situation, it was hard because I had gone into this area that I hadn't really been in before, and I knew it was tight as far as around a corner takeoff. There was 2 corners, and then there was trees, and I couldn't take a nurse in there to this particular spot. And normally we have a nurse, but I wasn't sure I could get out, if I took a nurse weight-wise. So I had to not have a nurse. And so it was just me, the mom and dad, and this little baby. And it was hard, the guy's grabbing my shoulders and yelling and screaming. And I'm, thankfully I know the language, so I'm able to talk back to him and let him know what's going on. He just wants to go back home, in this culture, you always, the bodies, if you die, you always bring the body back to the village. That's a cultural thing. So he knows he's from a remote mountain area. He had to hike down almost a day to get to where he could meet the airplane, with his little daughter. So he's trying to just get back home. I know I don't have enough fuel because I didn't take a whole lot of fuel knowing I needed to be light to get off the water. I had enough to get to Wewak, and I had my reserves, but we were 12 minutes from landing. There was no way I could just turn around and go back to the river. I have no way to get fuel out in the remote areas.
How'd you explain that to him? Did he understand that?
He did. I think, just explaining to him that I would make sure he gets back to the village. That was the main thing for him. He needed to hear that. And that we just had to calm down and finish this flight. it's gut wrenching at the same time. I have 3 kids, and that the guy's just going, his heart's been ripped out, and he's sitting there holding his daughter. And anyway, it just, those are things you'll never prepare yourself for, and you'll never know how you react until you're in it either. That's the other part of that. And a lot of those things impact you for a long time, not just for that moment that you deal with later. It's a post-traumatic syndrome side of what we do. But I think, that's why it's so important for us, for our pilots to know the language, the culture. That's a huge part of it, and being able to talk to them in their language and explain what's going on. But yeah, those are hard situations. But we've had so many. I'll tell you another story. I was just about 2.5 months ago, I was over, and we just came back from New Guinea a couple months ago, my family and I, and so I was over there. The U.S. ambassador came out from the U.S. She was the ambassador to Papua New Guinea, and she came out to. We launched a new airplane this year in New Guinea. It's always a big cultural thing to have a huge celebration when you do anything like that, and you bring all these dignitaries out. So the ambassador came, and we went out to this village, and I'd sent word to this village, hey, I'm coming out, and I have this American VIP that wants to see your village and the aid posts that we work out there. And so we land on the side of this river, and they have this whole singing group, and this culture, they call it a sing-sing, and they're all, it's back in the old days it's the same ceremonies they've done for hundreds of years, and they're dressed up and painted up and dancing and beating drums and in their grass skirts and everything. And so they bring us, off the plane, and they're throwing flowers and putting necklaces on us, and it's this whole ceremony that's just for usually, for honored guests only. This is what you do for really important people. So I've got this ambassador, and I've been working in this village for 10 years, and we have this new airplane. So there was a lot of events. They were very excited to have us there. So they usher us over, and we sit out on these chairs in the middle of the village, and everyone's crowded around, several hundred people around us. And in Papua New Guinea, it's all about speeches. And so I have to make a speech, and then the ambassador makes a speech, and the other we had a provincial administrator with us and my wife, and so everybody's making speeches, and then the village leader gets up, and for the next 45 minutes was amazing. They start pulling out people out of the crowd of lives that we'd saved.
No way.
And the first family they brought out was this lady Antonia. She's the first patient we'd ever actually flown with the plane. And I was looking at this lady, it'd been 9 years and since we flew her out, and her son is sitting there, and they'd named her son after me, which was a huge honor. Cool. So it was baby Mark all these years, and now this 9-year-old standing in front of me, and this mom and a dad, and I thought back, in that moment to, we talked earlier about how it took 10 years to get to New Guinea, and how we told all these people in America, we can save lives, we can do this. And here I am after being over in New Guinea almost 9.5 years at this point. And there's this first patient we've ever flown in. This is kind of like this beacon, this place that for me, I've always gone back to. I've never forgot that first flight flying this lady. She'd been unconscious for 3 days, picked her up at an obstructed birth, brought her in, they emergency surgery, and then going in and seeing her and this little baby boy with my family back in 2010. And then now fast forwarding 2019 and seeing this lady and her son and her husband again in this community. And then they just kept bringing people. This is one community out of over 65 different areas that we land in this river. And it's one community. And for about 45 minutes, they just kept bringing people up. You saved this lady. Oh, this lady had twins. You had breech birth. You flew her out. These guys had a tribal fight, and these brothers, were fighting. And this little kid, he had cerebral malaria, and it just went on and on and on. And it was just an amazing moment of for me, just reflection, thankfulness, to just see that one village that we've been able to impact, and to use an airplane, to use an aviation as a tool. It's the only thing that will work. And to use a seaplane in this area, it's the only plane that you're going to, in this area that can do what we do. And just to be so thankful for all those people around the world and in the USA specifically that had supported the dream for all those years. And it helped us get over there and helped be part of that. And just for me and my wife, Kirsten, to just be just overwhelmed with gratitude. And also, it also reminded us of why we're there. This idea of providing access and hope. Without hope, what do you have? And that's really such a powerful thing. Hope is such a powerful thing. And this idea of, if you've ever been in a place where literally you're 3 days away from help or your 45-minute flight, and what the sound of an airplane must mean to those people when their loved one is dying and you hear the sound of that airplane coming. And it's the sound of hope. And that's really what Samaritan Aviation is today. That's where this idea for me was like hope in action. We're hope in action to those people that have no hope without us being there. And anyway, I could go on and on and on.
No, absolutely. And you guys do an amazing thing, and it is powerful. It's just great to hear, and it's amazing to hear. I always talk about how there's so many different ways that you can contribute to the aviation community or even use aviation to help change lives. And your story and what Samaritan Aviation has done for community is just amazing. And I'm thankful that you were able to come on and talk. And I do have a couple more questions for you as well. But what you guys do is just amazing. And I'm sure that I don't want you to ever think that you're doing isn't making a difference in the world, because it clearly is. And like you said, you had 45 minutes of people just saying, you saved my life, you saved my life, you saved my life. And that has to be an unbelievable feeling. It's amazing. And I thank you for doing that, because not everyone can do that. Not everyone has the ability or the skills or the want to, or even kind of the drive to do that. And that's really cool.
Well, and to me, it's like, I can't imagine doing anything else. I feel so blessed, and we have an amazing staff too. The 3 pilots that are over there now, and our medical director and their families, and all of our Papua New Guinean staff. And it's like you said, not everybody can do that. Not everybody has that passion, but we have just amazing people that have that passion to serve. And I think for me, it's about looking around and being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And there's so much need everywhere around in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, and we don't have to go to Papua New Guinea to find need. It's all around us, and we have to be willing to see it and be willing to do something about it. I think for me to be able to do this in an area, and for my family to be over there for all these years and to be part of it, working as a family, and then to be able to use aviation, which is a passion, to do that's even better. And so for me, I just feel like one of the luckiest people alive to be able to use this passion. I'm more excited about doing this today than I've ever been. And
that's awesome.
It's amazing. We have another airplane. We have 2 airplanes now in New Guinea. We have another airplane that I'm flying around America right now, raising awareness and also recruiting new pilots to families to join us. And we're looking at expanding to another part of the country here in the next year. And that's a whole nother side that's exciting. There's a whole nother side of Papua New Guinea. It's the very second largest island in the world. Most people don't realize that. And the middle of the island has 10 to 14,000 foot mountains between it. And so on the south side of the island, you have the same issues, water everywhere, no way to get to the hospitals, no way to get medicine out. Yeah. And so we're looking at expanding and working with the national government right now and our partners to look at starting a whole other base of operations on the other side of the island. So that's exciting for me as I look forward and see the fact that we have a proven model now that works, and now we can duplicate that in different parts of the country, and that's exciting.
That is really exciting. And it's like I said, it's just a great thing that you guys do. And I guess kind of you saying that you're looking to expand kind of brings me up to one of the questions I was thinking about asking is, obviously, planes haven't been on these rivers or been in the places that you put them. And a lot of times when you go into a place, it's probably the first time you have ever done it. How do you know it's a safe place to land? How do you even just figure out the climb gradient, how much weight you can be? Kind of how do you figure that all out? Because it's not like you have these charts. You have other people that have done this stuff. You're kind of out there on your own doing this also. How do you plan for that?
You lean a lot on your experience now. I started out very safe, making sure I wasn't pushing the envelope too hard, making sure I had enough area to get off the water, to get out. making sure I didn't initially go right into the small little rivers that we operate into now. I stayed on the river a lot and in lakes initially to get that experience. I think you get to learn. You also learn the river. You learn currents. You learn where the deepest part of the water is. You also learn where the sandbanks underneath the water are, the sandbars, and over time now taking photos at low water, taking photos at high water. Obviously, you gain that experience too of knowing what it looks like, what it looked like when it was low, where the sandbars were. So for me, it's been just a growth through the years. Going into a new place is always a huge challenge. I mean, I've circled around sometimes for 15 minutes before trying to do a calculation. Can I get in? No, getting in is never the issue with a float plane.
Yeah.
You need about 600, 700 feet to land a float plane. And depending on the weight, you need 3 times, 4 times that amount to get off, and then to climbing over the trees. They don't climb very well.
No. Small problem, right?
Yeah, they're terrible, especially we fly a Cessna 206. It's not known as being one of the hotshot seaplanes in the world. It's if you go to any type of a discussion board, you'll find that most people are pretty critical of the Cessna 206 as a float plane.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with that, and also knowing, like I said, no one's coming for you, and you're jeopardizing the lives of all the other people on the river if you make a mistake. So there's a lot of pressure there. We take it very careful. It takes a lot of experience before you're allowed to fly by yourself. And even then, you're not allowed to go. We don't allow pilots just to go into new areas until they've been checked out. There's a couple of us that can actually go anywhere. But yeah, so there's procedures you do there. But a lot of it is you're making decisions based on experience. Sometimes you'll have some information. I'll talk to a villager and say from a certain place, and they'll say, yeah, we have water, you can land. And then I'll try to get depth. I'll try to get some different ideas, and show up, and it's nothing like what was described. And I've actually had to go home before, with a little bit of medicine, because there's no way I'm going to land there. So So you have to, and then you have as a pilot, you have this pressure of looking down and someone's in the canoe dying, down on the waters, and you're making a decision on whether you land in a dangerous area. Can you get them out, or you're flying back home and you're leaving them knowing they're not going to make it? That adds a whole nother stressor that you can't prepare yourself for either. And we deal with that. But yeah, I think it's a lot of leaning on your experience. We know what the plane can do, at gross weight. We train for that. We do a lot of modifications on the plane too, which is not something we talked about, but we go from a 520 to a 550 engine.
Yeah.
Continental engines in the older Cessnas. We put an 86-inch prop, so you added 6 inches to the prop, which is that you add that two combination, you're probably 20% better performance. We had a right-hand door. We had flint tip tanks on the wings. We had a stall kit on the leading edge. We have a Robertson stall kit on the one that we just brought over. We use Aeroset floats, which are brand new composite floats, which gives us great performance. So there's a lot of things that we've done to these airplanes too, to soup them up, I guess you could say, and make them a bit more of a hot rod. But you have to know your airplane, and you just have to know. It's not a good feeling when you're clearing trees by 20 feet. I can tell you.
No.
That's never a good feeling, and you want to avoid those. And so, making good decisions is paramount to safe operations. And we've done over 1,500 flights and haven't had any incidences.
That's good. That's amazing.
Thank God for that. And we've learned a lot as we go, and we're learning all the time.
How do you draw that line? Obviously, because what you're doing is either saving a life, or if you can't land there, then that person will end up dying. How do you draw that line to where you're not risking your life, the plane, the mission, everything to go save someone else's life? Like, I feel like having to say no, or trying it, or even going a little bit past that line can be really hard to manage in that kind of situation.
Yeah, it's, until you've been faced with it, you really don't know how you're going to react. I think you really have to compartmentalize well in that situation.
Yeah.
And you have a flying side, and you have to look at that, and you have to separate the two, which is not easy to do when someone's down there dying. And that goes back to that kind of your mindset as the pilot that are successful in New Guinea. And you have to make that, you really have to make that decision before you leave, the ground. And it's a way of operating. It's never easy, and it's something that you carry with you, because when you make a decision like that, and if you do decide not to land, which I've had to do before, you always wonder what could I have made it out.
Yeah.
Those things always get you. But you have to really look at the big mission. You can mess it all up trying to save one person, and now you've jeopardized thousands of people.
Absolutely.
And that's, nobody wants to be in that situation, but that's just the reality that we're in. And we know the airplanes. We've been trained well. Safety is huge. And so you have to make hard decisions, just like we all do when we're flying airplanes, wherever we're at. And I think that for us is just another one of those hard decisions. But you're tempted. I'm not going to lie. You want to believe you can do anything, and I think that's where, as a pilot, you have to pull yourself back into the reality of safety and flying and what this plane can do. And I've taken planes in places where I flew around, like I said, one time 15 minutes down into the river around the corner. Can I get out? Can I get out? And I finally was happy that I could, and I did. But it was crazy, it was a wild ride, and the plane did everything I thought it would do, and everything worked out exactly as I thought it would based on my experience. But I'll tell you, getting to that point and making that decision was very difficult, and other times you have to just go home. So.
Yeah, it's tough, and it just adds to it, because that you have the ability to save that person's life, and you also have to remember the big mission. Like you said, those communities are all very community focused, and you got to remember that too, that they would rather you be there and alive so you can continue to serve their community at later time as well. So it's definitely a tough decision to make. And I feel like everyone, including myself, would every once in a while be like, man, I just really want to land here to save this person's life, and give them a chance. Just give them hope,
Oh, absolutely. And the good news is it's only happened a couple times. There's other times where weather does the same thing. You're not over a landing spot looking down, but you're looking at a wall of black, lightning and severe thunderstorms, and it's the same thing. You have to turn around and go back. That's just part of making those decisions. You keep pressing on through the clouds and try to. It's the same. It's a different thing because you're not looking down at someone in a canoe, but it's the same idea. You're turning around knowing that person's probably not going to make it, and that's part of flying too. There's other factors that go into. There's safety factors with the maintenance factors with the airplane that crop up that you have to turn around sometimes. So yeah, all of those things. That's why the finding that person who can categorize, can make those decisions. It's why that's so important. The pilots that you have over there. It's more than just flying an airplane from point A to point B.
Yeah.
It's so much more that goes into that.
I bet. Can you can you fly IFR? I know it's a different country. There's different regulations, but do you guys try to stay VFR the whole time? Do you guys fly IFR when you have to?
Yeah, we're VFR over there. There's always, that's the stock answer. We're VFR.
Yeah.
If you ever got into a crazy situation, you could go IFR if you had to, but it's not something we do. If you can't get their VFR, we're not going. And so it's we're all IFR commercial trained pilots. So if you ever got in a situation, it's not like you're worried about other planes being around
right
in this area.
Yeah.
So it's not a cloud separation issue. And so we're all trained to deal with that, but that's not how we operate. We're VFR once we're over New Guinea.
Yeah, I'm sure the weather there changes all the time too. So I'm sure that sometimes that can really hurt you, or might even put you in a place where you're stuck in this village or stuck in a place that you didn't want to be stuck in. So,
well, that's the reality. I've had to spend the night before because I couldn't get out. And that's just part of what we do as well. I've had to turn around probably 4 or 5 times going out to pick someone up. So you have to make those decisions, and that the weather's so severe over there.
Yeah.
Other than the morning fog, once you get the big cumulonimbus buildups, you're not going in that anyway. It's at least you shouldn't be.
How are you perceived by these other communities? I know you talked about the government loves you guys and really respects what you're doing. I'm guessing you had to win over the trust, because like you said, they've never seen an airplane before. This is all new to them. You're taking them to new places. What was it like winning that trust and getting them on board? And I'm sure now, not necessarily, but I'm sure now they love seeing you come, because that means, like you said, that is hope. How did you let them know that hope was on the way with an airplane?
That's a process. I think the people know when you care. Mm-hmm. I think people know when you're there to serve. That's always been my goal, is to give people value, whether it's the kid on the street or whether it's the prime minister, whatever that is. It's of the country. It's about valuing people and treating people with respect. And I think we've done that well. That's been a big focus. I think when you're not charging for a flight, in this culture too, in the Papua New Guinean culture, a gift is actually an obligation. Yeah. So if you give somebody something over there, someone else usually is writing it down. And then when the situation comes up, you're expected to give that same gift or something better back. And so for us to offer a free service and not charge is all in their minds in some way, they owe us. They don't owe us because we don't charge, but in their culture, they owe us because we've given them a free gift. Right. So I think in some ways, they look at it that way. They take care of our families in the community whenever they can. And I'm getting bird eggs and smoked fish and papayas and pineapples, and watermelons and lettuce and greens. I mean, I'll go in places and they're filling the plane up. You're like, no. They want to give. They do have this desire to say thank you, and so we've just developed an amazing relationship. For me, I mean, I go in most of these places. I'm this bald guy, the white bald guy, and they all know who I am. Been there a long time, and our staff, same thing, and they know we care. And so we have the rapport in the village now, and the people know what we do, and we have a track record of just serving without expectation. And I think that's a powerful thing in itself. Absolutely. And for us as Christians, we look at that, and I see it as we have grace in the Christian faith, and we're kind of offering that to the people in the village, where we're offering a service without expectation and just loving. Absolutely. From that. And I think that's a powerful thing.
Oh, no, for sure. It definitely is a powerful thing. And I have one more section for you, which will be really quick. And then I have one last question, but it's going to be a rapid fire section where I'm asking you a bunch of aviation themed questions and you just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
All right. What is your favorite plane you've ever flown?
Oh, man. T6.
Okay. What is your least favorite plane you've ever flown, if you have one?
I love flying airplanes, but a Cessna 150 is probably about the least favorite.
Some people say it fits them like a glove. I'm not one of those people. I do not fit that plane like a glove, or it does not fit me like a glove. What is the ugliest airplane you've ever seen?
I just came back from Oshkosh, and I can't even tell you. I don't know the names of all these airplanes, but there was a lot of really ugly looking airplanes.
Interesting looking planes.
It's interesting. I don't know. I don't call airplanes ugly, but yeah. If it flies, it's exciting to me.
There you go. And if your perfect world, would you rather own a seaplane or a tricycle gear plane?
Oh, seaplane.
Seaplane. What is your dream seaplane you could ever have? If you could put any kind of floats on a plane and make it work, like you could put floats on a 787, would you do that? Or would you rather have a 206 or Caravan on floats?
I think a Quest Kodiak on floats would be my dream float plane.
That'd be cool. What's your favorite airline to fly on?
American.
What's your favorite airline livery or paint scheme?
Probably American as well.
What's your least favorite place to fly?
Favorite place to fly?
Could be a specific airport to land at.
Yeah, probably New York. Are you talking about where I fly myself, or
anything, whatever, just in general? Yeah.
Yeah, I think anywhere where it's hot, and there's no services.
Yeah, there you go. What is, outside of Quest Kodiak, since you already said that for a seaplane, what is one plane you've always wanted to fly or buy?
I think TBM.
What is your favorite airline to fly on? Did I already ask you? You said American. What's your favorite approach you've ever flown?
Favorite approach? I think probably a ILS into Palomar, Carlsbad at 200 overcast.
There you go. That's always fun. Yeah. I've been there a couple of times with the jet that I fly, so yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
That low fog comes in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. You are making a quick connection. It is, let's say you are going back to Papua New Guinea. You are flying, you have a connecting flight in LA. I don't know if this ever happened or what happened, but it's your last American meal for a while. You're in the airport. What's your go-to food that you would want to get?
Funny thing is, with our kids, we always ask them what they miss the most about America when we're in New Guinea. It's always food. And so In-N-Out Burger is always a first place as a family. We always leave LA. We go straight to the nearest In-N-Out
awesome.
Burger, and that's always a first meal.
Yeah.
So that would probably be my last meal. But in the airport, it's just anything that's American.
That's really funny. Yeah,
it's good.
Give me some grease, a burger, and some fries, and a milkshake, animal style, and you'll be all right.
That's right.
That's funny. What is one thing you always have to have on your person while you're flying?
I think, in an airplane, it's a survival gear because you need to be able to survive out there in the wilds. On your person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
like a spot or something like that, like a spot for GPS, and then also like a raft or any kind of equipment.
Yeah, we have a whole survival gear and kit that's in the plane. We also use spider tracks that tracks us every 2 minutes on a flight through an app. That we can get around the world. So that's kind of standard. So for New Guinea, that I wouldn't want to leave without having spider tracks and without having a survival gear, because when you're out in the wilds, bug spray, in New Guinea, malaria is one of the biggest killers over there. And so it's just little bugs that get you. So just having bug spray is a huge thing. A mosquito net, fishing gear, that sort of thing is for us is vital.
Absolutely. All right. Those are really all the questions I have for rapid fire. My last question for you, and then I'll let you go. Thank you for spending time with me today. Would be when this podcast comes out, you get some emails about people that want to do what you're doing, or you have inspired them to do what you're doing. What are some tips, some tricks, they don't have any flying experience, they don't have anything, but they know they want to do what you do. How would you tell them to go about becoming a pilot for you guys, or just a pilot for that type of flying in general?
Yeah, I think the reality is you have to start somewhere, and everybody starts flying by going down and getting instruction or going on a kind of inspirational flight at a flight school. You have to start the process. We can talk. A lot of people like to talk, and they just keep talking for years and years. Go do it.
Yeah.
You have to get your private license before you could even think, and your commercial instrument before you would even think about doing what we do anyway. So Go start. That's my first word of advice. If you're going to do kind of the bush flying and the kind of flying that we're doing, I think you need to look at having a wide variety of flying, not just flying into stock airports and long run wide runways, but you need to have some experience. And mountain flying experience is a huge thing. So mountain training would be a big thing. Learning how to control an airplane behind the power curve, learning how to get in and out of tight areas. Those are all the training that you need. And for us, having a mechanical background is huge as well. It's a long process, though. You start thinking about how many years it takes to get all of that.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And then, we are recruiting pilots. The interesting thing about our pilots, they all raise their own money. They all go to their friends and their churches, and they ask them to support them, which keeps our costs down and allows us to serve these communities without charging. And so that's a whole other side of of this thing is, so it's really a calling or a passion, we call it a calling, where you really feel like you're here on earth to go serve someone in a remote community and make a difference. A lot of times for us, that comes from our Christian faith. But that's a huge part for people that want to work with us. And I'm going around America right now. We're on this Hope in Action tour. I'll be in a lot of different areas over the next several months. You can go to our website, SamaritanAviation.org. You can look us up on Facebook at Samaritan Aviation, Instagram, and follow along. We have stories about different stories from New Guinea, different things that we're doing in America. And when we're at different locations, you can follow us and love to have you come out and see us at an event. Come see the new airplane that's going to be serving and saving lives in Papua New Guinea here next year. And we'd love to meet you and talk to you in person and tell you more of our story of the life-saving work that we do in Papua New Guinea.
It's amazing. Well, Mark, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you spending the time today with me, and I wish you the best. And if there's anything I can do to help spread the word, by all means, I'll do it. I'll plug all the stuff on Instagram and everything we post to help spread the word for what you're doing, because it's great stuff, and it's something that needs to be done. And it's one of those things where people know it needs to be done, but like, you actually went out and did it, and that is so cool. And I appreciate that, and we appreciate you. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me.
And that is a wrap of episode number 75 of the Pilot to Pilot podcast. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. If you enjoyed the episode, leave us a review. Check out our Patreon page. You can get some cool swag there, so make sure you check it out. Thanks, Thomas London. Enjoy your shirt. And please share this with everyone, aviation or non-aviation. Just share the word of the podcast. Help it get out. Let more people know that it is out there and make them aware. Aviation, as always, have a great day and happy flying.